welcome back to Beauty Within. It's your greasy girl, Fel. So for today's video, I thought it'd be nice to round up 5 of my favorite beverages that I've been enjoying so far, because I think in this time of year, nothing beats like going home and snuggling up to your favorite cozy drink, right? Right? And these recipes are actually so simple, and one of them, like the bone broth that I'm gonna be mentioning, is something that I've had since I was a wee toddler, like literally my whole life, and it's the most calming, like warm hug, and we'll get into how this really helps with skin and your body. And then there's my favorite teas like Genmaicha, and I really want to get into the actual benefits and the ritual of pouring it out so you can enjoy this wherever you are at night, after a long day, while you're cozying up reading a book, or you just need kind of that like pick-me-up beverage at night. Like I always find myself wanting to make some sort of tea at night, and it just like helps with mentally like calming down that at the end of the day. So whatever you're feeling, whether it's like bloatedness or some sort of inflammation that's going on, general fatigue, or things like sore throat, I feel like all of these drinks really have such great nutritional benefits for the body and the skin and the mind that I'm sure you're gonna find something that you like. So let's just get into my favorite recipe. Alrighty, so starting off with vinegar. In previous videos, we've mentioned things like apple cider vinegar, you know, like with lemon, as kind of this morning pick-me-up to get the body started. And we know that apple cider vinegar is a type of fermentation of apples, and anything that goes along with the fermentation process, it creates all these really great amino acids, because amino acids are the building blocks of our body, our skin. It's basically forming the structures of our skin. So we've talked about apple cider vinegar, but one that I specifically want to mention in this video, and that, you know, Ro and I have been really loving, is this one from 107, yes, which is the skincare brand. They have a star ingredient in their skincare, which is actually vinegar, and they create a specific like consumable vinegar, which you'll see here, that comes in a pack of 3 that we've been really enjoying. So much work and so much heart goes into actually making this vinegar that it's actually been passed down from 36 generations. And there's been this piece that was made by The Great Big Story that kind of documents the process of them actually making it. And right off the bat, it starts off with a quote saying, "You need to have a warm, beautiful soul in order to make this vinegar. As I stir it every day, I'm humbled by how the vinegar's flavor and aroma change." And like this so just spoke to me, because it really does paint a picture of being present and this kind of understanding that everything is kind of like living and breathing. And so the mood that you do something in, the energy that you project outwards, really has an effect on what it is you're making, which is basically self-care, right? So as opposed to apple cider vinegar, which starts from apples, this specific vinegar starts from grains. And by the way, this is not sponsored, okay? I just love it, and I feel like I really wanted to share it with you guys because it's so cool. So there's 3 different types that they have. One is like the OG one, which is rooted with the grains. There's also a fig one, as well as a winter melon flavored one. So why this is really great is because when you consume something like this, you know, prebiotics, postbiotics really helps when we put it on as skincare to help form that really strong skin barrier, because it works with our healthy, you know, bacteria that's on the skin to kind of strengthen that. But then when you consume it, it really helps with the gut microbiome to make sure everything is kind of running smoothly and your body is in its strongest and healthiest state, so that things like hair, nails, and skin are all thriving. So how do we prepare this? The great thing is that this is really multi-functional, and you can drink it or eat it in several ways. So you can make a dressing out of it, you can make a drink out of it, or you could make more of like a concentrated shot of it, depending on how you want to consume it. So if you want it in more of a diluted form, you can mix 1 tablespoon of the vinegar concentrate with water and use boiling water for a soothing drink in the winter, or you can chill it with some ice for a refreshing drink in the summer. And it also mixes really well with sparkling water, so you can add ice to it. You know, it really is kind of this customizable drink, and depending on how potent you want it, you can add more or you can add a little bit less. And you'll find that it's like quite tart and quite like sour, but you know, it's vinegar at the end of the day. But if you want a sweetened version, you can try this method where you use 1 part vinegar, 1 part honey, and then almost like 8 parts of water, or seltzer water or sparkling water, whatever it is. Or you could even use your favorite juice and mix it in that way. You can see it's so flexible in how you prepare it. I personally like a little bit of honey because sometimes, like, you know how some people are really good at adjusting to sour? I can't do sour. I can do bitter, I can do sweet, I cannot do sour. So those are like the drink formats, and if you want to mix it up and be a little crafty with a salad, you can also make a salad dressing, because salad dressings are also vinegar. So you can mix 2 tablespoons of this vinegar, 1 tablespoon of olive oil, then 1 teaspoon of honey, and a little salt and pepper to taste, and voila, you have a delicious, healthy salad dressing. Ding! And actually, we were reading one of the reviews, and one of the customers who got this like 3 set actually used it as a dipping sauce. So they mixed soy sauce with garlic and had it with some dumplings. Delicious. I have to try this, and I will be trying this. So if you don't want to buy this one, because it's, I think, $50 for a pack of 3, you can go on Amazon, and there are also these other kind of flavored vinegars that you can also try it before maybe you really want to jump into something like this one. So we'll leave all the links below so you can explore. All right, next, something that you can find really easily, but I'm also going to show you how you can make it from scratch at home. Well, not completely from scratch, but to put together yourself. And it's Genmaicha. This is a really popular Japanese tea that I'm sure you've all probably seen. Next to matcha, there's Genmaicha, and in the packet, you might be wondering why there's these little like brown rice looking things, because it does literally translate to brown rice tea. What's interesting is that in historical times, this brown rice was actually added to the sencha, or the green tea, by maybe people who weren't able to afford as much green tea, and so it would kind of create a bigger batch, and it was like cost effective basically. And because there is kind of less green tea within it, because there is this other portion of brown rice within each cup, there is a little bit less caffeine. So this might be a really great option for you guys who can't take too much caffeine, or who feel like you get a little bit jittery with any tea or coffee. So it's a good option for kind of like those night, kind of wind down chilling beverages. And why I had to have this one on the list is like purely because it just tastes so good. It's like earthier than green teas because it's got the roasted brown rice, and it just gives this nutty, sweet flavor, and it just like encompasses the mouth. It has a really like subtle aroma, and it's not as strong or as bitter as something like a matcha, but it's got this added kind of complexity than just your kind of fragrant sweet green tea because of the rice. So I'm gonna show you how to properly brew it, because oh my god, guys, I love tea, and the more you get into it, the more you really respect the art of cultivating leaves and brewing tea. It is an art. So when it comes to green tea, you really want to look at the temperature of water that you're boiling the water to before you brew it, right? Because different teas will require a different temperature of water. So for example, black tea can withstand hotter water, like closer to boiling, without this bitter kind of taste in the mouth. But if you kind of overboil the water, or it's too hot and scorching, and you brew a green tea, which is a little bit more delicate, you might have that more bitter taste with something that's actually supposed to be quite delicate and sweet. Which is why you'll see some kettles, they have different kind of settings, and this is all like to help with the teas. Like green tea, white tea needs a lower temperature of water, not boiling. So without going to an actual tea shop, this is how you can achieve the perfect brew at home. So if you're making just 1 cup, you just need 1 teaspoon of the Genmaicha, and you want to boil your water somewhere between 170 or 180 degrees. And this is about 80 to 85 degrees Celsius, which is why it's really helpful if you have a thermometer on your kettle, or like one of those old school stovetop ones that show you the actual temperature, because we want something shy of boiling. We don't want it boiling. Before you add the tea into your cup or your teapot, what you want to do is actually pour a little bit of that hot water into your cup or the teapot, swirl it around and kind of warm up that vessel, and then pour out the water, and then put your tea in, and then add that hot water. And what this helps with is actually to help with the temperature. So when you're actually brewing it, there isn't a sudden drop in temperature when you pour the water into like a cold cup or a cold teapot. So everything is in the subtleties when it comes to tea, and it really does make a huge difference. And now we're gonna let this brew, which is just leaving it there to do its thing for about 1 to 2 minutes. You don't want anything too much longer than that because it will start to get bitter, and that's really not the taste of green tea that you want. So after about 1 to 2 minutes, just take out the strainer, or if you put it in a little tea bag, take out the tea bag, and then you'll get these like slightly sweet, slightly earthy, nutty, buttery flavors. Oh my God, it's just the best. So now for those of you who want to challenge yourself just a little bit and maybe try make this kind of tea concoction on your own, this is what you do. It's super simple. All you have to do is get a little bit of brown rice, put it on a pan, and you're just going to toast that off until it gets a little bit like, you can smell it, it's a little bit nutty, but make sure not to burn it. So have this around medium heat, and then you're just gonna add this into your sencha or green tea that you have, combine it together. Now, sometimes if you buy it, you might realize that there's this like green powder. What that is actually matcha. So you can get some matcha powder and just dust that over, and you've made your own Genmaicha. And then you would just brew it the same way as how we did before. So it's super fun, super simple, and you can say you made it yourself. Now moving on to another tea, just one ingredient that you might have heard of or seen in your skincare, and it's Mugwort, also called Artemisia vulgaris. This is a perennial plant in the Asteraceae family, and the plant is native to places like Northern Europe and Asia, but it can also be found in North America. So obviously Koreans love using mugwort. They also ingest it. They have these little pouches, and it's a super potent concoction, and it's said to really help with everything from, you know, menstrual cycles, helping to calm your nerves, things like digestion, diuretic, which just means it will help with like the fluid retention that might be going on in your body, so it will help flush everything out. And then if it was used on the outside, it was things like for wounds and insect repellent. It's just got this plethora of benefits from the inside and out. So you guys know I love my mugwort, and everyone that I've suggested mugwort to, like the Isntree ampule, the I'm From essence, which is my absolute favorite. It's very similar to Centella asiatica in that it calms, it soothes, it helps with redness and irritation. I just love it. So this ingredient to me, like that we've spent a lot of time talking about using topically, I was so excited to actually find the tea version of this, and I got it on Amazon. So I'll link it below, and it's really interesting because when you take it out of the packet, it's not like a loose leaf tea, but it kind of clumps together in this, it's like if dandelions were all clumped together, and it's kind of fluffy. So what you do is you definitely need a strainer or one of those like tea kind of pocket things to put it in, and yeah, you just brew it like any other tea. So boil your water, have a little bit in there. I think it really depends on taste tests, like how strong you want it to be. I put about 1 to 2 teaspoons and then let it brew for about 2 to 3 minutes and drank it. And for the first time, I was kind of like, oh my God, what does mugwort taste like? Like I've tried licking the mugwort essence, and let me tell you, it doesn't taste like that. But it's just this like earthy, it's not sweet like maybe a chamomile tea is, but it's just like really grounded and earthy flavor, but it's not bitter as well. So it kind of sits in the middle for me as something that's mild, and I think a lot of people can enjoy, and it's not too bitter. It hasn't got like a distinct taste that might repulse you or anything, but it's also not sweet. So those are kind of the flavor profiles of mugwort that I have anyway. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts if you do get it, or if you've tried it, leave it below and share what your taste buds are sensing. All right guys, so moving on to the next one, which is, oh my God, like my favorite recipe for bone broth. There are so many bone broth recipes, and you can use like any type of protein, whether it's beef, chicken, fish, pork. Like this goes back to ancestry, how they would make foods, right? And the reason why I think it's been able to transcend time and the recipes have been handed down from generation is because of its nutritional value and how that really ties to like, you know, how we all come together. Because like growing up, there would always be a soup at the table. When you break down what actually goes into something like a broth, it's the collagen and it's that fat from the bones and the meat that actually help to build your, once again, gut microbiome, and it's really warming. And the collagen that you get from the bones actually helps with your own kind of like building blocks of the skin and the body. So especially when it comes to these kind of like colder times of the year, or when we just want to feel a little cozy. This is all around, by the way. Like we would always have soup, and you know, your grandma or your mom would always tell you, if you want to be beautiful, you got to drink this soup. And thinking back, I used to always think that was just kind of like whatever, but the more you understand ingredients and what it does for the body, like it truly does make all the difference. So this one in particular is my favorite. You know, some soups can be like really hard to eat as a kid. Maybe you just don't want the vegetables, or there's like all these random stuff in it, but this one, I loved everything. It's only got like 4 ingredients. So you can use pork bones, there's carrots, sweet corn, and tomato. And I think like different regions will also add, you know, slightly different things. You can add like goji berries or even jujube dates, but my version is just super simple and something that anyone can make. So how do we make it? So you first want to prepare your corn, so just clean them, wash them, and maybe cut them into smaller chunks so it doesn't take as much time to cook down. And then your carrots, you want to wash those, cut those, peel them, and then cut them into chunks as well. Then with the pork, you want to rinse and wash the pork bones for any, I don't know, sediments that are in there or whatever it is. You can also use pork ribs if you would like, because I think they have a little bit more meat on them, maybe a little bit more enjoyable to eat. And some people like to kind of wash down or pre-boil the pork just to remove any blood and fat, but that's up to you. Personally, I haven't found much of a difference if you do that. The main thing is that you just want to wash down the pork bones a little bit. In some recipes, they won't have tomatoes, but I personally love having the tomatoes in there as well, so I'll just cut them in quarters. And then with the onion, just peel it, and I like to kind of roughly chop it into those squares. And actually, sometimes I love adding potatoes in there because by the time I eat it, then it's like that carb element, and I don't need something like rice, you know? So it's got like your meat, your vegetable, your sweetness, and then you've got the potato. Okay, so when that's all done, basically you just get a pot. If you're using an Instant Pot, you can use the Instant Pot, but I just kind of slow cook it over the stove in a normal pot and chuck everything in there, fill it up with water until it's kind of at least covering and a little bit more. I don't have specific measurements, you know, because with like Chinese cooking or Asian cooking, it really does just come down to the feel. And you can put a little bit of salt in there, but my tip is don't put as much salt in this kind of like boiling and simmering phase as you would want to have when you eat it, because you can always add more salt to taste after this cooking process is done. So basically turn it on high, let it boil, and then when it starts boiling, I'll turn it down to about low or medium just to let it simmer. So you want to see a little bit of that like slight micro bubbling action happening, and I'll just let that sit on the stove for about like 1 to 2 hours, because the thing is, the longer you cook it for, the more flavor comes out of everything, and just that little bit of salt will bring out and enhance the flavors of pork, the sweetness of the corn and the tomatoes and the onion. So one thing you might notice is that upon it bubbling and simmering, all this like film and residue that will start to float to the surface, and that's basically from the pork. So all you have to do is kind of just like get a spoon or whatever it is to get that out. You don't need that. So after about 1 to 2 hours or whatever it is, the broth is basically ready. You'll see that the carrots should be cooked, the corn is nice and soft. You know, if you put the potatoes in there, the potatoes are ready, and the meat is hopefully cooked. Because it is pork bone, there shouldn't be a lot of meat anyway, but when it's ready, it just falls off the bone, and oh my god, the meat is so good. it's so good. And then you'll see this film of like fatty layer, which comes from the bone and the cartilage and like any of the fats and the collagen. It's so good. So you can salt it to taste, and that's basically it. You enjoy the best broth, and oh my God, it's so good. Making something like this just kind of makes you feel home again, and you can take a pretty little picture and send it to your parents and be like, look, Ma, I made it. That's like my favorite soup of all time. And the best part is, because there's if I'm making this for myself, that's a lot of soup. You can just freeze it in little containers, put it away for however long, and whenever you feel like soup again, you just get it out of the freezer, put it on a bowl, heat it up again, and you're good to go. All right, last but not least is a Korean cinnamon tea. And doesn't this just sound like the perfect beverage for that end of year Christmassy season? And if you've even gone to, like Korean barbecues or Korean restaurants, sometimes they'll give you a little teacup of this, and it's called Sujeonggwa, and it just kind of like finishes the meal, cleanses the palate, leaves you on a high as you're walking outside the Korean restaurant. And that's actually where I first kind of came across it, because it was so potent, it was sweet, it was like cinnamony, and it really packed a punch. So I was like, what is this? And as someone who doesn't really like cinnamon flavored things, I could appreciate and enjoy it because it was sweet as well. So what is it? It's a traditional Korean dessert beverage, and you can have this hot, you can have it chilled, and it's basically 3 ingredients. It's ginger, cinnamon, and brown sugar. Who can't make it? I told you this video would be easy. I want you to make all of these, okay? Show me that you made all of these. Just kidding. Not kidding. And the earliest recipe actually dates back to in the Goryeo era, where the Korean palace women would prepare a version of this drink on New Year's Day. But these early versions of the drink didn't actually include cinnamon, which was more of a kind of modern addition, but now it's like the staple and the way to prepare it. And sometimes what they'll do is add persimmon to the drink, which also gives it another level of flavor and sweetness. And there's also pine nuts that go into there as well. So it really depends on how you want to kind of like embellish the drink, but the core of it is just those 3 ingredients. So this recipe is also so simple that I don't really have ingredients, like specific measurements for it. So you can use about like half a ginger, but then it really depends on how big your ginger is, because I've seen some mammoth gingers in my, they're like this big. It is not okay. And then other ones are like this big and they go for like $4, and you're like, what the heck happened to the ginger market? Why is this so expensive? Anyway, so you just want to cut it up in decent kind of chunks, not too thin of slices, and then put that into your pot. Add maybe 3 cinnamon sticks in there. This will also depend on how much you want that strong cinnamon flavor. For me, I want something a little bit more subtle, so maybe I'll put 2 or 3 because cinnamon is really potent. And then you just put that on boiling over a stovetop, and then add in your brown sugar. So you don't want to add too much brown sugar. I would say this is really to taste. But you can start off with maybe 2 tablespoons. So once it boils, maybe turn it down to medium and have that kind of simmering away for at least 30 to 40 minutes, so that you can really all the flavors are extracted from the cinnamon and the sugars and the ginger. And it is this kind of like deep, dark caramelly brown. Then you're good to go. You can taste it along the way. It shouldn't be overly watery, because once again, it is like this shot of intense kind of flavor. So you want it to be potent. So if you feel along the way that you want to add a little bit more cinnamon, add a little bit more ginger, do so. This really is up to you guys. But the outcome is this delicious beverage that I think is perfect for winter, autumnal nights where it's really chilly and you just want to cozy up to something and have something heated and warm. And cinnamon has a bunch of benefits. It's anti-inflammatory, it's an antioxidant, and then ginger has been used for centuries as a beverage kind of nutritional ingredient, and it really heats up the body to the point where you don't even need to turn on a heater anymore, because you're warm from the inside. It's a little bit spicy, so it counters that sweetness, and it can help with things like indigestion, which is why sometimes I have ginger tea after a really large meal where I feel like a little heifer. It helps with calming the bowels and all that stuff. So that's the last little beverage, and I think it was perfectly placed at the end end of the video because it is really there to end the meal, and so it'll end this video. So I'm so excited about all these drinks that were mentioned because they're so easy. You know, no one wants to go out and have to buy like 6 different ingredients to make one little thing and never use it again. All of these are really readily available. You can also really adapt it to your own taste buds in your own life, and it's super beneficial for your body. It helps to, you know, calm your mind, give you that kind of self-care at night, and it's just a warm hug in all aspects of that. So if you like this video, please share it to your mother, father, brother, sister, whatever it is, or your friends that you want to make it with, and take picture, tag us in it if you do make it. Leave us what you want to see in future videos below, and hope you enjoyed. We'll see you very soon. Make sure you subscribe and like it.